No, that's great. If you do have any questions, we have got Sarah will be on the call, but you can direct them. You've got my email address if you wanted to ask or visit or take this further, please do get in touch. So we're going to move on to the next part now, which is looking at the Improving Primary Science Guidance Report. It was published in November 23. It's available on the Education Endowment Foundation website, and it's got some useful documents that sit alongside it as well. So you've got the recommendations poster, which is what we're going to look at this afternoon. And then you've got some additional tools on there, which will really support with professional learning back in school if you feel there's areas of this that would be useful to improve your provision for science in school. So the summary of the recommendations is there on the right-hand side, and we've got it there looking at the 6 recommendations. Really interestingly, it's that developing pupils' scientific vocabulary is coming up as the first recommendation. And I know that's something as you're looking at your progression maps and you're looking at knowledge, skills, experience, vocabulary is coming in there, and it's a strong feature in a number of these progression maps. You can see that we'll go through them all in detail, and I'll share the link at the end of the presentation so you can access this should you want to look at it in more detail. Let me just pop my screen up a second. So we've got the first recommendation there, which is that developing pupils' scientific vocabulary, but it's often here, it's scientific vocabulary can often be confusing and abstract, and it's difficult for pupils to fully understand and use. And I think this was something that was picked up in the report. It's sort of everyday words can suddenly have a new meaning when used in a science context. So if we, take, for example, the word force. In everyday language, that might indicate an action undertaken with great effort, or to be made to do something you don't want to do. But in the world of science, a force represents pushes and pulls. So it makes things that can make things move, stop, or change. So you can't see a force, which again makes it harder to understand, though you may feel or observe its effects. So we need to have things in place and structures in place to support pupils to develop that scientific vocabulary so they can participate in that science learning and communicate their understanding. So we look at the types of words and their grouping. It will depend on the topic being taught and the knowledge and the prior knowledge of your pupils. So we've got an example here. It's the vocabulary used when teaching forces and magnets. So it's looking at the language in terms of tier 1, 2 and 3, but also looking at words for science investigation too. So words like test and table. And how has table been used previously? Are they, is that just what they sit at to work, or is it something that they record their results in? And it's having the opportunities to look at that as well. So that second, the orange comments there, that words that have that everyday meaning and a scientific meaning. And have we considered these when we're looking at the vocabulary we are teaching? So the second section to this recommendation is that explicitly teaching their new words and their meaning and creating opportunities for repeated engagement and use over time. So when we plan to introduce the new words and definitions, it's how can we link this to when they'd previously have heard it, so it builds on that prior knowledge. So supporting pupils to learn new vocabulary and its meaning by creating those opportunities to repeatedly engage with the words and use them in different scenarios. So we've got some strategies to follow now, which will support that. So it's having a look at multiple opportunities to revisit and engage. And that the aim is that they can see how the vocabulary is used, and then they can actively use that vocabulary themselves. So it reinforces their learning, but supports the recall. So it mentions in the report then using vocabulary approaches that promote rich language connections and help them understand the relationship between the words and the concepts. And it mentions the power there of the visual aids combined with image creation, with drawings, with pictures, with diagrams. And this can just really help them understand the meaning of these new words. And this would be nothing there but strategies, again, such as discussing the origin of the words or the structure of the words often helps as well to help them just develop that deeper understanding. So as we move to recommendation number 2, it's that looking at pupils to explain, encouraging pupils to explain their thinking, whether verbally or in written form. So these are some questions that are mentioned in the report to just keep you to focus that on what are we looking at achieving here. So we know that discussion is an effective way to share, and we want to be able to develop their thinking through that guided discussion as well. So it looks then, it goes into the background, and something that comes out clearly in the report is that giving them plenty of opportunity to do it verbally and removing the barrier of the writing. So it's accessible to all children to be able to access it and to be able to talk about, to recall, organise and express their thoughts and ideas, to refine that understanding and to be able to start thinking scientifically as well. So it goes on to this recommendation, then breaks into those 3 subparts there. So it's having a look at the collaborative learning environment, looking at the power of dialogue, and that's the dialogue between yourselves and the children, but also pupil to pupil. And then looking at developing the reasoning and problem solving and the justification. So we have a look at those in a little bit more detail. You've got that well-structured collaborative learning approaches, such as that paired and group work, offer that opportunity for pupils where they can make their thinking explicit. But it's collaborative learning approaches paired with well-designed tasks that integrate talk, demonstrate the greatest impact. So it's having that collaborative environment as well, which will, further support that, so the children feel safe, they feel they can talk and make those suggestions. So you've got the talk behaviours. So like we would with any, we often see that with the health and wellbeing during circle time activities and all. What do we need to do? What makes us a good listener? You've got your expectations, but you've got that task design then. So consider group sizes of no more than 5, and how do you involve it? And we've got the Voice 21 a number of schools use, and there is a professional learning session which will be available this week on the EAS website, looking at how we use Voice 21 in our STEM subjects and how that can be used to help you consider the task design and develop that language and the children's discussion skill really through using those Voice 21 techniques. So the second one there is that capitalise on the power of dialogue. So you've got some ideas there to follow up and things they're saying that really have a positive impact on it. But it's that dialogue between the teacher and pupils, and between pupils can provide the opportunities to articulate thinking and make explicit a shared understanding. So when planned and structured, dialogue may support pupils to integrate new ideas with their current knowledge. It will identify those gaps in their understanding and reorganise their thoughts to consolidate their learning. So we come on to then the cultivate reasoning and justification, and this example here, you can see it was taken from in 2021. But as they progress through primary school, they're encouraged to be curious, to make those observations, to ask questions, and increasingly support their ideas and thinking with explanation and evidence. And that is just, taken from the Curriculum for Wales. What are we asking them to do? What are we asking them to develop in that statement of what matters 1, which threads through all of the other statements of what matters them. So strategies which may cultivate reasoning and justification may include some of these on the board, on the screen now. So we've got that explain, that discuss, and that re-explain. So strategies that are useful here are, I'm going back to Explorify now. If you've got the, if you haven't used Explorify, head over there to set up a free account, and there's some really powerful resources and tools on there which can really help with the discussion. So this is just taken from Explorify, and it's looking at autumn leaves, and it's which is the odd one out and why. Is there a right answer? If the children are able to justify and give those ideas, it's just giving them the opportunity for them to explore. This is a great tool to be used at the start of a topic, because it will inform you about what the pupils already know and expose any preconceptions. What are their preconceived ideas that they have about the world, and how can we use that to inform our teaching and learning in science so their scientific knowledge develops and gets stronger. The next one we look at is the concept cartoons. Again, Jura's talking about concept cartoons regularly, and they're just there to put a range of viewpoints forward about science involved in everyday situations. So they discuss their viewpoints around the concept, which include common misconceptions and preconceptions. So they reflect on what they think of the characters' viewpoints, and then give their reasons. Do they agree? Do they disagree? As we move on to recommendation 3, again, some questions to consider there to how can we guide our pupils to work scientifically? So what did they learn in an activity, and was it what you wanted them to learn? And considering then the value of the task, which is what we do day to day, isn't it? We evaluate every lesson where in our heads it could be better, it would be better if we'd have done this, or and adapting to suit the children you've got. So why is this important? So working scientifically integrates the science content knowledge with an understanding of the nature, processes and methods of science. So if we combine these different aspects to work scientifically, it can be challenging to do this to benefit both the pupils and the teaching there. So if taken as an example then is when measuring temperature, they may need to consider how to read a thermometer, recall what the reading was, write it down in a chart, think about the standardized unit to use, and then what did the teacher say we do next? And it's, having that almost cognitive overload into all those small steps that go into being able to get to that point. So as a result, it can be easy to get lost in that task and then losing what the learning objective was if it was to record the temperature. So it's giving them the ability and giving them the skills to be able to understand these challenging concepts that they're faced with. There's just a 7-step model then, which provides that framework to support the pupils in becoming independent scientists. And although it's looking like, you develop the one, move through, it's like everything that we work with, there's going to be some iteration to this. So you may need to check more often, more regularly if the children have, if they've understood the strategy instruction, or do you need to go back to and reflect and use this as and when you need to. And again, another model which is quite useful is looking at where you are in terms of teacher and learner, and the emphasis then in the lesson. So how much is over to the pupil, how much is over to the teacher. As we move on to recommendation number 4, it's linking science learning to relevant real-world context. So some questions again to reflect on, to consider what we need. But why is this important? And it's something we're working with all the time, giving children those real-life, authentic experiences. So it's in this context then, it's being referred to as the application or relevance of a concept, idea or skill in a practical everyday world. So it's giving the children, by connecting that science teaching to meaningful and tangible scenarios, they're able to develop their attitudes towards science and really develop their attainment in the subject as well. And we look at the 2 areas here. So you've got the considering the real world and engaging with science concept, supported by those virtual models, because often a lot of the science we can't show them. We need the models. They can't experience it. There are models there to support it. So you've got here a guide of another useful tool there. So these are some key questions to consider, and there's an example in there of what your challenges may be. How does this support the context? How can you use it to develop? So it's planning your teaching so that the context adds to the learning. It's accessible to all pupils. So weigh up the balance of time, cost, engagement, value alongside the key learning objectives. So it's thinking about, like, one of the main aims of primary science is for pupil to understand the uses and implications of science today and in the future. So it's giving them plenty of opportunities there to take the learning outside of the classroom as well, to that real world relevance in the primary science lessons. So you've got here some examples to consider. Is that how is friction relevant to sport and athletics performance? So they may investigate how equipment in real life, goalie gloves, cricket bats, tennis rackets, are designed there for the maximum grip. How well do sunglasses protect your eyes? So that would build on skills to use data loggers, measure how light is blocked, and it will link to then real life official safety standards. And you've got then that does the food I eat provide a nutritious and balanced diet. So people might use food packaging to learn more about how it's classified in real life based on nutritional value. So just a few examples there to consider and reflect on. to make that learning explicit. And then we come to the engaging with science concepts, and that being supported by those virtual models. And it's coming back to that it is quite complex and hard to visualize. Some of these new some scientific phenomena is quite difficult to grasp as a 7-year-old. But this is a model as a way in representing these concepts, so it's simplified and accessible. So you've got the digestive system you often see as a model, or the water cycle, and there's some common ones we'd see in primary. So these can be used then to support the teaching of concepts. So you could use it for demonstrating the relationship between the movement of the sun, earth and moon, or using online 3D models, or constructing a gear or pulley system online, or observing the impact of changing the number of pulleys or size and the number of cogs. So using that just gives them that something there to grasp and to be able to make those connections. So when identifying whether a virtual model might support your teaching, then it's useful within the guidance, within the report that's available online. You've got these questions there to consider, that these prompts that may just really help to identify whether it is going to support the teaching. So move on to recommendation 5. So again, like with the others, there's some questions there to consider, and then it's looking at assessment again, isn't it? And it's useful for both pupils and teachers, but for pupils, it supports them to take ownership of their learning, and they respond to that feedback and aim towards their learning goals. So within this recommendation, there are 5 steps. So it's giving you 5 steps to look at. And our first one there is the recognising what you want to assess to reveal their understanding and respond in your planning. So planning teaching that builds on existing knowledge, and coming back to that prior knowledge. What knowledge have they got? What experiences and what skills do they have? So this is then would go on to the diagnostic assessment. So it will uncover those pre-existing ideas and understanding and help you address those misconceptions or preconceptions that may be there. And we look then at monitoring pupils' learning to inform responsive teaching, and it comes through to practice that is in our classes already. So looking at that, clarifying, sharing, understanding those learning intentions, success criteria, elicit that evidence of learning, and then reflect on any teaching adjustments that may be needed. So this would be your formative assessment then moving forward to see, to ensure the children know where they are and how best to go. Taken here is summarising then what pupils have learned against the planned curriculum. So assessment should be viewed as the tool for improving teaching and learning rather than simply measuring outcomes. And it's how your pupils and your school respond to the important information. So this is just a model there to just go through the process and show you the types of assessment then that would be useful to inform next steps. And then the final recommendation there is, why is this important? So teaching is a continuous process of development. Everyone has a potential to become a better teacher, but providing those opportunities for science-specific professional learning can harness this potential. So we need to look at having that high-quality professional learning that addresses the gaps you've got in subject knowledge or across the school in areas that are not taught as well as perhaps other areas in the curriculum. So they've got some recommendations within the report that are useful, and again, a range of tools that sit behind it. There's this useful list of 6 questions here that can support with the direction of your professional learning. So it may include identifying and accessing professional learning. It may be ensuring then that it sits on the SDP to enable you to be able to invest in that professional learning around the science and really take it forward. So you've got here where you can access the support, and you've got we'll touch on some of these areas later on, but we've got how can you consider that and how can you plan it to and evaluate for the next steps in what you're doing. Some of these websites, the Primary Science Teaching Trust, have got some sessions that are free to download, free to access, and you can access those to develop some of the primary science key features. But you've also got the Royal Society of Chemistry of an increasing number of professional learning opportunities available on there as well. And then you've got the some ideas here on how you, as science leads, you can be supported. So the foundations for good implementation for professional development include leadership and school ethos, which supports it. So you've got some ideas here that can just support and take you on to the next steps of what you can do to really develop the science experiences and knowledge skill development your learners are having. So if you wanted to have a look at the report in full, it is available on, I'm not sure if you're able to click the link here online now, but I will pop it in the chat and make it available through the Teams space. But like I've said a couple of times, there are a range of tools that can just help thinking and support next steps in your science, on your science journey, really. So I will stop there for a second to see if we've got any questions. And then I am going to move on to the next item, which is looking at the Support in Our Schools website, which I know Sean has touched on as well. So we will pop the link in the chat so you've got it, but over the summer, well, at the end of the summer term and into the autumn term, we've been updating the website. So you'll see from here, Sean took you from the landing page, but I am now here on the science and technology page, and we've got almost mirrors the digital all strands. So you've got your humanities, you've got each of the AOLEs have got a page on here. So this section there will take you to each of the statements of what matters. But taking you through, you've got access here to the professional learning offer and what we have available this academic year. Got a list of our partner schools. And then you've got some information for each of the statements of what matters. Jonathan, I can see, has joined the call, so I'll hand over to him shortly to share this professional learning offer we've got here. So you've got the statement of what matters. When moving on, you've got some exemplary, you've got the Llysweri cluster have kindly shared and worked on their progression map. So you've got exemplar material there from what they've done to get those that progressive planning in place for each of the areas. So sitting alongside each of these, then there's professional learning materials. So you've got the presentation going through the detail and some of the prerequisites before you can develop it. And then you've also got some examples of practical investigations, as well as then some concept maps there where it goes into more detail for a few of the different concepts within some of these statements of what matters. So you can go onto the matter. I'm sorry, again, it could be motion sickness, so I do apologise. And here then you've got the progression linked to the best research. And if you've done any work with Andros and I on your curriculum mapping, a lot of the work comes from that best research that is available online, and it looks at what is appropriate to be taught up to the age of 11, 14, and so on. So that's been used to inform these progression maps moving forward. So you've got then your computations, you've got the small strands on here, which is looking at key considerations for this statement of what matters. And then you've got some planning for progression with links to resources. So you've got some examples here of some freely available resources that will support the development of the computation statement of what matters. We also use this site then to host the network meeting. So you can see here we've got the primary network meeting from the summer term, and following today's session, then that will be available on here as well as our contact details then, and it takes us back to the network pages or the team spaces where you may find other relevant information. So the next part of the session, we're just going to look at the professional learning on offer and some of the events we've got coming up. So new this year, we've got the teaching, design and technology from early years to year 6. This is a session being held and being run by partner schools and myself and Andros. So we're going to look at design technology from early years to year 6 and look at some of the strands covered and how you can develop that throughout. So this is happening on the 15th of January, and the link is available in the PowerPoint, which will be in the Teams space following the meeting. We've got then exploring biology from year 1 to year 6. So again, there'll be progression maps, lesson plans, teaching resources to support the development of if you were looking at or focusing on biology this year. And again, there's a similar opportunity, but from year 2 to year 6, where it's looking at electricity. I'm sorry if I've just said that. But again, a range of resources to support planning and example investigations will be made available following that. That is the 27th of November. So that is a week today. So if you would like to book on that, please either drop me an email or access the links through the PL calendar, and we can get you booked onto that session. We've got progressive block play, which is being run by St Andrews, and that's looking at how to introduce and how they've got, so you can see there, it's going to identify the process and stages of block play, developing the understanding of how to set up that high quality block play provision, looking at the resources as well that would support this, and the role of the adult as well. So these events do get booked up quickly, so if you are looking at developing block play, please do book yourself onto this session sooner rather than later. We've got the Science and Technology network meeting. So again, the 13th of March is the next one, and the 17th of June in the summer term. We've got, again, new for this year, we've got Teaching Science in the primary school. So this is a full day event. It's being run by myself, and we're going to look at effective science pedagogy, and we're going to look at the research behind what makes effective teaching, what makes teaching good in primary science. And again, that will come up with a range of resources, a range of material that will really support teaching and learning back in schools then. That is in February. This time next week, so again, a week today, we've got using big questions to develop links across the AOLE. So Jess presented it during the summer term about the approach Eveswell and Somerton have taken. So using design thinking, using that statement of what matters to develop the links and provide those purposeful opportunities. So if you wanted to know more about that, that is closing tomorrow lunchtime. It's a visit to the school. It'll be hosted in Eveswell, and it is for 2.5 hours next Wednesday morning. And we come on then to British Science Week, where we've got, it is the 7th to the 16th of March, just highlighting that date to you and to have a look at the exact activity packs and resources that are available online. And Rebecca was unable to join us today, but her contact details are on the screen there. For those of you that are unaware, the Royal Society of Chemistry will come into school and offer bespoke professional learning to you as a whole staff. So you can see from here, if you do have a look on their Steps into Science website, you've got the resources broken down into year groups, but you've got then some support for teachers looking at sustainability contexts. And then you've got the resources that are there ready to go. So it looks at the skill development. So rocks and soils then, how do you develop it? What do you need to learn? And they've got the resources to support that, all available on the website. So there's an example there as well. They've got them for a few areas, but you've got Victorians, you've got Romans, you've got space. But what they have done that is quite useful to look at start of topics is how this links to the science and what you can use from it to develop science at an appropriate level. So these science idea webs have been quite popular to schools, for schools moving forward and looking at it. So again, then just an example of the sustainability context for primary science and what that looks like. Also on there, you've got STEM careers and skills activities. So it's you can see the resources that are available, but it looks at the STEM careers, which is something I know a lot of schools are looking at and developing, and activities then to develop skills linking to those STEM careers. Talk for primary science fits quite well with the recommendation around the EEF report, but you've got Children's Talk Introduction, sensory stimulus, stories, puppet videos, concept cartoons. So you've got a range of resources again on the Talk for Primary Science website to just support that development of talk and learners being able to use scientific vocabulary correctly. You've got demonstrations, and these were created quite a few years ago now, but they are useful. If you've got children with interest in it or looking at developing the classroom, you have got the primary science investigations and demonstrations available there. Just a few other examples there. So you've got the chemistry and how you can use these videos to support. You've also got there then from kitchen to classroom. So there's a range of investigations or inquiry type activities you could do to really help children to develop, but it's with resources that are available in your kitchen, resources that are easy to get your hands on. And linking then you've got global experiments. And I think that is the last of the slides there from the Steps into Science from the website. I'm going to welcome Jonathan onto the call now. I believe he has joined us. So I'm just looking. Yeah, we've got, are you there, Jonathan?
Yeah.
Do you want me to share my screen or are you okay with yours? Or do you need to? Can I show you? Brilliant. Okay. So welcoming Jonathan today, he's going to share with you their website and what they've done to look at progression and resources they've got available. So Jonathan is from Hengoed Primary in Caerphilly, and he has got the partner school role this year for science and technology. So thank you for joining us, Jonathan.
No problem. Can you all see my screen? Can you see that, Sue?
Yeah, we can see it. Brilliant.
So Sue asked me to look at inquiry types, which I delivered a full day of training down in a Green Meadow cluster school. So when I go back to our school then, I thought this is something we need to brush up on with our staff. I wanted to make something that was really useful, that could be shared around the cluster and kept as a website of reference, really. So there's 6 different inquiry types, broken them all down because what I've noticed talking to a lot of schools is schools jump straight into the FAIR testing element. So when I look at books from different schools, you'd have not much science teaching happening and then jump straight into a FAIR test. So I wanted them to be aware of different science types and then even just to practice all the parts that lead up to a FAIR testing investigation, such as, lots of predictions, analyzing graphs, talking through methods, to have the skills before they even got to this part of it. So linked to all of these are some nice activities you could think of doing. So this is observations over time. What happens to frogs spawn? How do shadows change throughout the day? Just trying to spark the teachers in my school's imagination of the types of observations they could make. Similarly with identifying, grouping and classifying, giving them some nice ideas there that would be relevant from lower phase all the way up to upper phase. And the same with research. And I think research is often overlooked as an inquiry type with the schools I've been speaking to, because if you give pupils a directed, structured question, then it's going to give them a wealth of knowledge as an inquiry type to put into good use when they do their practical, which would have either been at the beginning of a topic and they can work backwards and see what people need to learn, or as a culmination of work right up at the end of a topic. So this is also the same with pattern seeking, problem solving, and then the regular FAIR testing. So something nice and simple to follow, just to remind staff the different types of inquiries. But then I started to think, so what does the inquiry look like? What is the progression of inquiry? So we know we want pupils to be curious and adventurous and ask all the inquisitive questions from lower down the school. But how do we foster that up into PS3, where we want the skills to be a lot more focused? So you've got your using senses to explore in progression step 1, asking the why and the how questions. Then focusing on FAIR testing, obviously in groups. So, doing group investigations with structured scaffold, all the way up to what we're expecting in, P3, before we send them up to comprehensive school. They're looking for the possible sources of error, the anomalies, what were their results like compared to different groups, and how much did their predictions work to be close enough to their actual outcomes and why. So also on the site for the staff, I've just got some useful tools really. So basic querying skills for progression step 1, types of observations they could make, types of exploration and play that would lead into this and line up with it nicely, types of questioning to ask them, and also ways that they can record things. So then some activities they could do with it. Same for PS2, which I would class as intermediate inquiry skills. Things that they could plan and predict. Types of investigations they could do, types of ways they could record and present their data, and then types of ways to analyze and conclude. Similarly, more example activities, and then the same for PS3. Types of investigations they could do, type of hypothesis, a lot more independent at this end of the school. Types of way they can critically evaluate people. So even just for the wording, you can see the progression is clear. So that's the types of inquiries. I've even linked some cross-curricular links because from the training days I've been doing with staff from other schools, I was quite surprised to see that some staff were making the link between what they were learning in science and then the abundance and numeracy of opportunities to present themselves in there. So we've got some examples, and then the most important thing to do with the curriculum for Wales obviously is real world context. How can you make it authentic to where you are and where the children are? So I'm going to stop sharing the screen and share another where we've looked at progression. 2 seconds. It's on this website. We've broken it down into the strands of biology, chemistry, and physics, focusing on the what matter statements that are relevant to those, and then what does progression look like from the descriptions of learning from PS1 up to PS3. So we're trying to foster curiosity and critical thinking. So broken down the descriptions of learning and what should that look like down in our lower phase, in our nursery reception, as it comes all the way up to my class in PS3. So we've got just even recognizing living things, and they need food and water and shelter to survive. As you move on to how we impact on the environment, and then up into PS3, understanding organ systems of animals, including humans. I find teachers in the school appreciate having a document like this they can follow. Not to say they're being spoon-fed, but it definitely gives them a framework so they know that if a learner, the next stage for a learner to go up into is quite clear for them to see. And then in the different areas in our discovery rooms, we'll have these and the ones I'm going to show you later, where pupils can actually see where they are and where they need to be. So similarly, for matter and the way it behaves, exploring materials in a basic sense. What do they feel like? To then the vocabulary you'd expect to hear up in when you're investigating the properties in PS2. Why are these used for these types of, well, what properties have these got to be used for a window? Why is plastic used for a bottle? Investigating how materials change state from solid to liquid to gas, to then the progression of the particle model, looking in even deeper at the solid liquids and gases, investigating far more independently as we go up to PS3. And then finally, I thought this was quite a big one. There's quite a lot of descriptions of learning in this one. So we've separated it into movement in PS1, and then forces in 2 and 3, and then the sound, light, and magnetism, and electricity, sound, and light for the others. And as you can see there, the progression's clear, and staff, it gives them a structure, a framework of where to lead or suggest that the pupil influenced learning takes them, with the types of activities they could use also. So this was just for science in general, but then we've gone even deeper with the school where we have, let me just stop sharing. we've looked at progression in STEM as a whole. So following some training I'd attended, I came back to school raring to go. We wanted to set up places for people to be curious. So we set up 2 discovery rooms in the school, and our motto was question everything. And we have these, this is one of our 4 purpose characters with the tagline, creativity, curiosity, resilience, because those are the types of learners that we want to see from nursery straight up to year 6 before we send them off to comp. So we've broken down, and in these rooms, we've got tool areas, we've got block play areas, cooking areas. And I just wanted to make it clear to staff and pupils that there is clear progression in any aspect of STEM. So for example, when they're using tools, and these are on display around the tool areas, you've got your younger ones connecting with nails and screws. As it goes up, we're looking at pyrography and including simple electronics with tools also. I think we were looking at block play earlier. I could see that one of the schools in Newport was offering PL on that. And it's just stacking blocks, talking about why they're stacking them, the shapes and the colors, all the way up to PS3, where they're talking about load bearing and weight distribution. And this lends itself perfectly to lots of types of inquiry and investigations within engineering. I'll skip through a few of these, but we've been following the Froebel occupations in school. It was sewing last term. This term we're looking at stick and pea. So all staff were given all the resources, and they've also been given a progression steps to see where their children are. So in every area of the class of the school that's got the stick and pea activity set up, this will be displayed nice and clear on the wall for teachers and children to use alike. So they know that they're going from developing fine motor skills and trying to balance basic structures all the way up to designing more complex structures, using different mathematical knowledge, and then improving and iterating, testing how well the structure withstands all different types of stresses. So within what looks like a simple activity, there is definite structure. And I'll skip down to computer science. We've broken it down into 4 sections so far. We're a Google school, so what does using Google and computer science skills look like in our school from PS1 up to PS3? So they're going from learning how to log in and out to looking at data integrity, collecting data from Google Forms, and using basic functions within spreadsheets to achieve results. And then similarly for coding, microbits and bebots, wherever these are in the school, then the progression is nice and clearly labeled above it. And then within science itself, we looked at the inquiry earlier, but then I was thinking with science equipment, do we know what equipment should be in what areas of the school, and do we know how children should utilize it? So from PS1, just hands-on activities with simple magnifying glasses, and then closer observations, and then lab standard microscopes to explore plant cells and deeper into matter. I'm aware that some schools haven't got use of technical lab equipment, but I find it's really helpful if you've got a good relationship with the comprehensive school, because they've got no problem with just lending you equipment or inviting you in to work in the lab so the day either. Which led us on to graphs, what the children need to be able to do to pick apart the graph, create the graph. So this is nice and clear. Looking at mean, average, calculating it up in the PS3. And then finally, investigation. So I share this with my staff each year and every course I do, because like I said before, I find lots of schools are jumping into a full investigation, but unless they're practicing the predictions across the curriculum, so in English, predicting what's going to happen in the story next and getting that clear statement of prediction and justifying it with the reasoning, linking that with graph work, which can be thrown into any subject across the AOLEs, and then good conclusions that don't have to all be written down. They can be put into songs, or they can be put into play scripts or recorded. before you can even have the skills needed for the full investigation. I just find our staff think it's a really useful tool. They're even thinking of each AOLE lead creating something similar for their tool, just so you get that clear progression of where we are across each of the AOLEs.
So thank you, Jonathan. Have we got any questions for Jonathan while he's on the call with us this afternoon? I think the first question is, are you able to share the link?
Yeah.
So we can have a look at it, and schools can use it to support their cluster discussions then, and discussions within school to look at that progression within some of the finer skills as well, within the AOLE. So looking at graphs, looking at what equipment, and again, that vocabulary comes through that we were talking about earlier this afternoon as well. So it doesn't look like there are any questions coming through, Jonathan. So thank you very much for sharing that with us and sharing the work you've done.
Okay.
It's there's one last resource I just want to signpost you towards before we finish this afternoon, and that is it's located on Hub, and it's the cross-regional website, which has got a number of resources on there, a number of resources and guidance to support the development of the science and technology as well. So if you, on your Hub homepage, have a look for the professional learning tab, sitting behind that, you have the Regional Education Consortia tab. If you scroll down, it's on that second row there. On there, you've got a range of professional learners. So I'm not going to go through it all, but if you do click on for Wales tab, you've got the curriculum for Wales professional learning, which has been created, and there are school examples and case studies there. So I will just bear with me, the progression in areas of learning and experience. So you've got each of the AOLEs on there, but you'll see you've got school examples feeding through. So you'll see some of our schools feeding on here for the maths. And then you've got the science and technology. So you've got a document there to support practical ideas and guidance to support practitioners from July, so earlier at the end of the summer term, earlier this year. And then you've got some videos there as well. So you've got a resource to support there. So you've got the website video there to support development of progression across the AOLE. But then you've got your practical guidance as well, which is available should you wish to have a look at some of the exemplar material that is available. So that I'll pop the link for that in the chat for you. And it's at that point I'd just give a minute before we finish to just think about your commitment to act following the session, what you're thinking, what you're sharing. And if there's any feedback, please do pop it in the chat after this session. Is there anything to focus on for the spring term? You're looking to hear about different things? If so, please do let us know, because we're always looking for feedback from the schools to make sure that we're meeting needs. But if you don't have any questions or don't want to stay on to speak to us, thank you for joining this afternoon. The recordings will be available on the website, hopefully by the end of this week. And look forward to seeing you at some point at a professional learning event, either in one of our partner schools or run by the core team over the next couple of months. So diolch yn fawr. Thank you all. Thanks for joining us.